Everything you've been told about a good night's sleep is wrong. For most of human history, across Europe, Africa, parts of Asia, and the Americas, people did not sleep through the night the way you do. They slept twice. A historian named Roger Ekirch spent more than 15 years going through diaries, doctor's notebooks, court records, plays, and poems from before the year 1750. He started noticing a phrase, in language after language, that he didn't have a modern word for. He found it. Scattered through more than 500 references to a sleep pattern nobody alive today practices. People would fall asleep around 9 or 10 at night, sleep for 3 or 4 hours, then wake up, on purpose, for 1 to 2 hours, and then they'd go back to sleep for another 3 or 4 hours until dawn. This was not insomnia. This was the schedule. You know the feeling. You wake up in the middle of the night, for no reason. You can't fall back asleep. You panic. You spiral. You think you have a sleep disorder. You don't. What you might actually be experiencing is the faint ghost of a sleep pattern that was completely normal for most of human history. Your nervous system might just be doing what nervous systems did for thousands of years before electricity. The phrase first sleep appears in Chaucer, in Homer, in Don Quixote, in the diary of an obscure English country doctor, in the legal testimony of a Yorkshire farmer testifying in 1697 about something he saw between his first sleep and his second. In French, it was the premier sommeil. In Italian, the primo sonno. In Latin medical texts, primo somno. Across multiple European languages, the same divided sleep concept had its own name, because every culture practiced it. It was as ordinary and unremarked upon as the word dinner. Okay, so what did they do during this midnight interval? Pretty much everything. 16th century French and English doctors specifically wrote about sex during the midnight wakeful period. They thought it was the best time for conception because both partners were rested. There are actual medical manuals from the 1500s with this advice spelled out. A French doctor named Laurent Joubert wrote in 1578 that working-class couples conceived more easily, specifically because they had sex after their first sleep, when they enjoyed it more. People prayed. There are religious manuals from the 1500s that included specific prayers designed for the watch between first and second sleep. Catholic monasteries had a whole formal church service called Vigils and later renamed Matins that was deliberately scheduled around 2 a.m., slotting itself perfectly into the gap between first and second sleep. People stoked the fire, banked the coals so the kitchen would still be warm at dawn. People got out of bed and walked over to their neighbor's house to chat in the middle of the night, as you do. Mothers used the time to check on babies. Farmers used it to check on animals. Writers used it to write. There are famous letters and poems composed specifically in the wakeful hour. The wakeful hour was so universal that English doctors had a single word for it. They called it the watch. It was not insomnia. It was the second of 3 acts: sleep, watch, sleep. Then the lights came on. The shift didn't happen overnight. It took about 200 years, and it followed the spread of one specific thing: cheap, reliable, after-dark illumination. Starting in the late 1600s, things began to change. Coffee houses opened in cities and stayed open past dark. Streetlights spread first across Paris in the 1660s, then London, then everywhere else. By the early 1700s, in wealthy European cities, you could be out doing something at 10 p.m. Eating, drinking, debating philosophy, going to a play, which had never really been possible at scale before. And bedtime started moving later. People who used to go to bed at 9 started going to bed at 11, then midnight, then later. When you compress all your sleep into a single shorter block, 6 or 7 hours instead of the 8+ across 2 segments, the biphasic pattern just collapses on its own. By the late 1800s, references to first sleep and second sleep had basically vanished from English. The language stopped having the words because the people had stopped doing the thing. And here's where it gets really weird. In 1992, a sleep researcher at the U.S. National Institute of Mental Health named Thomas Wehr decided to test something. What if you took modern people, 15 healthy men, and gave them, for about a month, the light conditions of a pre-industrial human? He put his volunteers in a windowless lab for 14 hours of darkness every night. No phones, no artificial light at all once the lights went out. For the first week, the volunteers slept the way they normally did, 8 or so hours straight. They liked it. It felt great. Then something started to shift. By week 3, almost every single subject's body had spontaneously broken its sleep into 2 pieces. 3 to 5 hours of sleep, 1 to 3 hours of quiet wakefulness, 3 to 5 more hours of sleep. Not 8 hours of garbage broken sleep, not insomnia. 2 distinct, restful sleep blocks with a calm awake interval between them. Exactly the structure Ekirch had documented in 1500s doctors' manuals. The exact pattern Roger Ekirch had documented in 1500s doctors' manuals. Spontaneously rediscovered, 3 centuries later, in a windowless basement in Maryland. And the volunteers reported something else interesting. During that midnight wakeful hour, they felt unusually peaceful, calm, not panicked, not anxious about being awake. Their blood tested in that window showed elevated prolactin. Prolactin is the hormone normally associated with the meditative trance state, breastfeeding, and post-orgasm contentment. In other words, what the volunteers felt during their accidental midnight wakeful hour was the exact same neurochemical state your body manufactures during the most contented experiences a human can have. The wakeful hour wasn't a bug, it was a feature, engineered into your brain chemistry, and modern light just buried it. So, tonight, when you wake up at 3 a.m. and your brain does the modern panic spiral, "Oh no, I need 8 straight hours, I have a meeting, what's wrong with me?" That's the panic talking, not the biology. Your body is probably just trying to do an extremely old thing that you've been culturally trained to think is a defect. A lot of sleep researchers, Ekirch, Wehr, others, now think that some of what gets diagnosed today as middle-of-the-night insomnia might just be the biphasic pattern trying to come back, in a body that no longer has the cultural permission to let it. The treatment, they suggest, is mostly to stop fighting it. Wake up at 3 a.m.? Don't grab your phone. Don't turn on the bright bathroom light. Don't run a productivity diagnostic on yourself. Lie there, read by a low, warm light. Pray, if that's your thing. Have a quiet conversation. Have sex with the consenting human next to you. Pet the cat. After an hour or so, you'll likely get sleepy again. The second sleep will roll in. And in the morning you'll feel, possibly for the first time in years, like you actually rested. You are not broken. You are doing a thing your ancestors did for tens of thousands of years. Your brain still knows the choreography. Your body still has the hormones queued up. The only thing that's changed is that 150 years of bright artificial light has convinced you the middle act of the play is a problem. It's not a problem. It's the play. Curious which other modern problem turns out to be ancient and fine? Subscribe. Wednesday's question is about the moon.